Welcome to your weekly astrological weather. This is your place to get practical guidance for not only surviving, but thriving with the cosmic tides. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. I am so happy today because I am here with traditional electional astrologer, musician, and Astrology Hub A-Team superstar, Joe. He is just this amazing human being who is an incredible astrologer and has so many gifts and talents. And we are so lucky to have him on our team at Astrology Hub, and now to have him featured on the Astrology Hub podcast. This is actually not his Astrology Hub podcast debut. We did an episode for the Jupiter-Neptune Jubilee a few months back, but this is definitely his debut on the weekly weather. So thanks to all of you for giving Joe a big, huge, warm welcome. And Joe, welcome to the weekly weather.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. People don't know, but I'm here all the time, but I'm just not on camera.
He's always here. Okay, before we dive into the weekly weather, I wanted to read a testimonial from Candy. Candy, thank you so much for sending this in. Candy says about the podcast, it's one of the best tools that allows me to integrate my spirituality. I can't stress my love of this podcast enough. It's not something I listen to lightly, but instead something I utilize as an actual reference daily. I replay each episode literally 3 times, sometimes more, and each episode is so deep and real and touching, it takes a while to fully take in the valuable lessons. I don't know how I lived without it, but it's forever a part of my life now. Thank you. Candy, thank you so much for that testimonial. I'm so happy that this show and this Astrology Hub creation is touching your life in this way. It makes me very happy. So thank you for taking the time to tell us about that. And what I'd love to do today is start a little different because Joe is an electional astrologer. And Donna Woodwell, actually, the astrologer Donna Woodwell, reminded me of the response that I had when I first heard the word electional astrology. She said, this was years ago. She said, Amanda, we should probably do something on electional astrology. And I was like, I don't want to do astrology about the election. Like, that doesn't sound very interesting. She's like, oh God, Amanda, no. That's not what electional astrology is. So whole education on what electional astrology actually is. And now it is a tool that I use in my life in a very consistent way. And Joe is actually one of my go-to electional astrologers whenever I have an electional type question. So Joe, let's start with that. What is electional astrology and how is it intended to be used?
Right. I think a lot of people answer it in many different ways, but I love that you started with the story because that was also my assumption. When I first heard it, I'm like, why would anyone want to study elections?
Studying elections? Like, that sounds really boring to me.
Right?
Interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But the way that I define it, it's almost like the study of the intention of the world, and you use that study to match the intention of the world with your intention. So one other way that I also explain it sometimes to my clients, it's the art of matching intention to symbolism. It's finding a moment where the symbol is already there and you're enacting that symbol because that's a thing that you already want to do. So let's say we have a very nice Venus transit happening in the sky, and you're looking to have a date. It's probably best to wait until Venus is doing really good to go on that date, rather than go on a date where Mars is very strong, and Mars is more about competition and arguments and really fleshing things out. So it's really just using astrology as a calendar, like it was meant to be used.
So in choosing an electional moment for something, I'll give you some examples of the ways that we use it at Astrology Hub. if we are launching a new project, we will choose an electional moment, like an auspicious moment where the astrology is aligned in a really advantageous position, and we will launch the project on that date. Or Joe, actually, at the beginning of every month, he will look ahead at the month and he'll look at Astrology Hub's chart and be like, these are great days for Astrology Hub. And what I love about it, Joe, is it shows you how alive the universe is, that there is magic in all these different moments. And if you're aware of it, you can work with it. You can like co-create with it in a really magical way. And if you're, I have found that if you're unaware of it, oftentimes you're stumbling into it anyways. Like you're choosing, just your intuition or whatever things are aligning so that you're aligning with the dates anyways, but it makes it a lot of fun to know what's going on.
100%. And even sometimes too, it's good to know when not to do something, especially when you have like a big idea or a big project. Sometimes you may need more time to that to really flesh the idea out. And for me, I'm a big deadline kind of person. and electional astrology is perfect for that because it will really set in stone like a time that will never repeat again in your life. And you really have to work hard to make it to that time. Or sometimes it might do the opposite and give you much more time than you were thinking. Sorry, my Google
just got
just
a whole
triggered.
new dimension. Everyone who's listened to the podcast for a long time has heard me use the words cosmic curriculum. And that's how I think of astrology a lot of times. It's like giving us this content that we're working with. And it's almost like, I loved school, so forgive me. It's almost like homework assignments from the cosmos. But what you just said adds a whole nother dimension, that there's actual cosmic deadlines for perfect moments to do certain things. And electional astrology helps you become aware of what those perfect moments are so that you can hit those deadlines. I mean, I've had times where I'll say, Joe, what's the right, recently I joined a mastermind. And I said, Joe, what's the right moment for me to give my like official yes so that this whole endeavor has the support of the universe behind it? And he gave me like 3:34 a.m. Hawaii time. So I set my alarm, I lit a candle, and I was ready. Like I had everything ready to just hit the I do button, essentially, at 34. And so far, it's been an amazing experience. So I would say,
I'm glad.
Yes. Okay, so Joe, the reason why we're talking about this is because this week, Joe is actually going to give us some electional moments, some auspicious moments for doing certain things. And he's going to highlight which people this is most relevant for. And if it's not relevant for you, that's also helpful information. Because if there's something you've been considering doing, this may give you the information of like, okay, this isn't the right week to do it. I need to wait.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, 100%. Oh,
Before
go for it.
we go on, I wanted to just let you know that if you're interested in electional astrology and learning how to do this, we have a mastery class with Omari Martin that teaches you how to look at the chart of the moment and understand what it is good for and what it is not good for. And that mastery class is available at astrologyhub.com/elections. astrologyhub.com/elections. So if you're interested, go check that out. Joe, let's start with the overarching theme. What would you say is the theme for the week?
I was thinking about that a lot, and there's so many themes converging this week. But I really think that we're still in this very intense Mercury mode. Gemini Brett just last week talked about Mars going into Gemini, and I know that Jamie also talked about Mars into Gemini, and Christopher Renstrom also talked about Mars in Gemini. So we're all in this like very big transit that's going to last 6 months. So and now, just last week on Thursday, Mercury also went into Libra, which is also another air sign. So not only we're having the themes of Mercury with Gemini, but also the themes of air being really emphasized. We have 3 planets in air right now, and they're all in different signs. So that makes that what is called the Grand Trine. And that allows for a really nice flow of energy from all topics related to studying, relationships, talking it out, fleshing ideas out, and all of that good stuff. So I think the theme of the week would be talking it out.
Talking it out?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, but one of the things that I did want to mention though is that with this talking it out, one of the things that we do have to be ready is that both Mars and Saturn are involved in this talking. And traditionally, Mars and Saturn are their malefic planets, and that always sounds a little scary. But from an electional standpoint, sometimes the malefics are really good at getting rid of things, and really saying no to certain things that you might not want to finish, or maybe sometimes it's competitions and saying no to the opposition that's in your way, or like your competitor. So maybe working a little bit harder, especially with that Mars and Gemini and the idea of like competition really being emphasized. So it's not just talking it out, but it's a little bit of arguing and really just like getting to the nitty gritty of conversations and topics and plans. With Mars and the retrograde and all of that, I think before we go into the election, it's important to think that we're in this big retrograde moment. So this is not really the week to be starting things that you want to last a very long time, but it's very good for those foundational steps. If we're thinking about especially air and the theme of ideas, it's perfect for fleshing out ideas and really writing things down and coming up with a plan, but maybe not the best time to actually executing that plan, if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, it sounds like I'm having a dream come true moment, because I have always wanted a podcast recording studio and my own like little office space. And as we speak, the foundation is being laid for my dream come true podcast studio.
Right.
So that's what I'm seeing, what you're talking about. It's like we're laying foundations, we're being very thoughtful about what we want to build, but we're not necessarily putting up the walls and the roof and all that yet. We're not necessarily launching the project.
100%. That's literally the thinking that needs to happen this week.
Okay, great.
No steps taken, just a lot of thinking.
Okay. And what about for people that are like, God, I have to, like, I have a deadline. There's something I have to do. What is there? I know there's things that can remediate or help us work with the energy when we kind of don't have a choice, but it's not the best timing for something. Is there anything that we can do to quote unquote remediate this energy if there is something we have to move forward?
Yeah, of course. I think a good place to turn to is actually Mercury, and Mercury being in Libra, and that emphasizing a very good and very important aspect of there, which is collaboration and again, talking things out and assigning jobs to people. It might not be that you're not the person to do it, but if we all come together, sort of thing, we can maybe take the project forward, or finish the building the roof. I guess everyone puts a tile at a time, sort of thing. Yeah, and I think too with Mercury in Libra, the idea of negotiations is also emphasized, and it's important. And I keep going back to Mercury in Libra because Mercury now is not only ruling the sun, it's also ruling Mars, and Venus is also moving towards Virgo. So Mercury will be responsible for all these planets, and therefore for all these areas of your life that it wasn't responsible for before. So the idea of negotiation and business and taking that very thoughtful, like give and take sort of approach to everything is very important, because if the time is not really made for action, talking things out and negotiating who gets to do what, even if some of those tasks are not the most exciting to do, really will make sure that throughout these retrogrades and all of those pesky little malefic moments, we're still getting things done and we're still moving forward. Even if it's slow and even if it's a little frustrating, we're still doing things, you know?
And would you say this is a continuation of the kind of course correction energy that we've been working with the last few weeks, where it's like, if you feel like things are moving backwards, it's really just getting you more aligned for the way that you're wanting to move forward ultimately?
Yeah. So as we're also moving into this Mercury moment, we're also moving to mutable moments because Mercury is responsible for the two mutable signs. And mutability is all about transitions and going from one place to the next. And I think this one is even more important because for the past little while, we've been dealing with this Saturn-Uranus square and all of the fixed placements and all of that very heavy and slow energy. But then next year, Saturn is actually getting ready to move into Pisces, which is also a mutable sign. So in a way, this week that we're entering is not a foreshadowing necessarily, but maybe a sneak peek into 2023 and the heavy mutable emphasis that's going to be taking place. Because so far, all the fixed signs, so Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, and I'm missing one.
Aquarius.
Aquarius. All of them have been doing the heavy lifting, but then next year we're getting to change roles a little bit, and the mutables are going to be doing the heavy lifting. So now, especially for the Mercury and Jupiter ruled people, so that would be Pisces, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Gemini. This is your moment to really step into what 2023 will feel like with an addition of responsibility. And also getting used to the idea that responsibility is gonna become much more shape-shifty in a way. You're not all going to be responsible for the same thing throughout the whole time. It's a responsibility that starts in a place and ends somewhere completely different. So it's getting used to ideas not ending where they started, I think is very important. I don't know if that answers the question, but I think
it does. I can't even remember my question, but yes, it does. It answers a lot of questions. Can you answer this question? What do you mean by 2023 being a very mutable year? Like, what does that actually mean? Like, how will we feel that energy?
So this is what I was saying about having ideas start in one place and then somewhere completely different. Mutable things in elections, actually, if you're ever using a mutable sign as the rising sign. So for those who don't know, in elections, the rising sign determines the quality of the action and where it leads. So mutable signs are notorious for things that have to happen twice. I have a really good example about my YouTube channel that I started way long ago, and it was under a mutable rising sign. I think it was Gemini. And what happened is that I started it and then I had to stop it, learn a whole bunch of other things, and then get back into it and start planning it all over again with the new knowledge that I had. So with Saturn going into Pisces, it's going to be a lot of that, but very nebulous. Like not starting things out and not even knowing that it's a beginning. You're just sort of like aimlessly walking around and stumbling into tasks and actions, but then somehow in the end of that whole journey, you find that you actually made it. You don't know how you made it, but you're there. And that to me is how mutable elections work in a way.
Interesting. Okay, great. Let's talk now about the week itself. So starting wherever you want to start on Monday.
Yeah, of course. So Monday, we do have that Moon and Mercury conjunction happening. So we're right out of the gate. We're back to Mercury. And again, it's a Mercury conjunction in Libra. So we're talking about those negotiations and those ideas of, and with the Moon as well, really being, really emphasizing the fairness of it all. Even though there's that trine to Saturn and Mars making things a little bit harsher, but it can be harsh truths that are actually fair. And sometimes fairness might not feel 100% comfortable, but in the end, we'll be able to see that whatever actions were taken or whatever thing that might have upset you was actually needed and actually took you forward, sort of thing. And then Tuesday and Wednesday is when it gets really exciting, because that's actually the election that I had for the week. And again, I don't think this is necessarily the time to be starting those big projects and like launching something really, really big that you want to explode and succeed, but to start thinking about how you want it to look in the end. And the election that I had was on Wednesday, and it's actually really easy to spot because if you just go outside, as soon as you see the moon setting, that is your time. So you just have to figure out on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on your time. And you just need to make sure that the moon is in Libra and it's setting. Really easy to find if you have an astrology software, but even if you're just on Wednesday and you Google, when is the moon going to set? I'm sure you're going to find it. And that one is the perfect moment for getting the ball rolling, in a sense. The theme that I was trying to emphasize in that election was that really nice Mars sextile to Jupiter that's happening on Wednesday. And Mars and Jupiter have a really interesting relationship because both the signs of Jupiter and both the signs of Mars are trying to each other. So that means that whatever areas of your life that those represent, so you just have to go to your chart and look into what houses Mars and Jupiter rules. All of those are going to be collaborating in a way. So to have Mars and Jupiter sextile one another, it's the warrior, so the drive to go forward and to get things done, and the wise man, Jupiter, to work together and not just act aimlessly and just be bold and brash, but to do so with a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of care, especially because Jupiter is retrograde right now and going back into Pisces. So it's revisiting those ideas that really started during the Jupiter Pisces moment, where everything was just big and exciting. Like it's the dream, we can do it, we can make it. But now it's like, okay, so that was a dream, that was cool. But now Mars sextile Jupiter, how can we actually make that happen? And again, we're not making that happen, but we're starting to think of the plan to make that dream happen. Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us around that Jupiter-Neptune time created treasure maps. It was the Aries new moon, remember? And so a lot of the people in the Astrology Hub community, we created treasure maps or vision boards. And I do remember that real expansive energy of like, oh, wow, anything's possible.
Right.
Many things have become possible that we're like, whoa. But so would it be a good idea to revisit those boards and actually see what the visions were and sit down and start to make a plan to bring some of those things into reality?
Yes, 100%. But one of the things that I was going to say with Mars is that the plan, whenever we think of plans, the tendency is to think that we have to add more things to what we're already doing. Like all the to-do lists, especially with Mars and Gemini. I have Mars and Gemini natally. I have 1,000 to-do lists and I try to do everything at once and it never works out. And I'm always frustrated that there's like 3 or 4 things left. So with this election, I think that the time is to really cut things down, and especially thinking about Mars and the sharp sword. It's going back to that vision board and thinking about what of those things are not necessarily taking me where I want to go anymore, or what is it that I thought would look really nice or would feel really nice to have that may not really be necessary anymore. Again, with Mars and Jupiter, it's really that wisdom to say no, because Mars as a malefic is a planet of no's. And sometimes no's are very important, because if we just say yes to everything, then we're gonna be overburdened with everything. And especially since this, with the moon setting in Libra, that means that Aries is rising. So Mars is really the planet that is carrying the election forward. And knowing that Mars will be retrograde for these 6 months, it's really thinking about what can I start to cut down for the next 6 months that will help my plan, like that big idea, actually come to fruition. Like, how can I be as simple as possible with this idea?
That sounds, I mean, I'm thinking back to Gemini Brett's week last week. That sounds also like some Virgo energy of editing, discerning. And I know we have a lot of Virgo energy happening. So it seems like we could be weaving both. And question, when exactly is Mars going retrograde?
So Mars goes retrograde retrograde, I think it's by the end of October, but I can figure it out really quick. So as of today, 61 days until Mars goes retrograde. So we have about 2 months and a day.
And would you say that if we're looking at our goals and visions, that in addition to editing things out potentially or revisiting whether or not those things are what we really want, would you also say this is an opportunity to prioritize? Be like, yes, maybe all of this is part of my vision, but here's what I'm going to work on first, second, and third.
Yes, for sure. 100%. And I think with the tendency of the mutability of it all, with Jupiter also going retrograde into Pisces, will be to start at one place and then somewhere else. So don't really feel set in stone with anything. Like, it's good to cut things down, but maybe leave them in the back burner a little bit, because it might be that you have to come back to those things later on. But definitely prioritizing should be, I think, the advice for dealing with the Mars retrograde. Because the tendency will be to try and do it all. And that will be very overwhelming.
I can so relate with that. I don't know if all of you out there can relate too, but I get so excited and I want to do everything all at once. And it's like, gosh, then you do nothing. So you have,
Right?
you have to prioritize. It can be very helpful for me to have people around me who are actually really good at that, because I naturally don't do that as much. Like, I really was just like very optimistic, like, we could do all these things. It's like, well, probably you can't, but it's really helpful to have people around you to help you reflect, like, hey, that's a lot to take on all at once. So maybe having people around you too that can help you prioritize or help you look at what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, 100%. Going back to that whole air thing with the Mercury, Moon, and Libra, really start delegating and negotiating, who does this belong to? And maybe it was that your dream is not even your dream. You dreamt it for somebody else. And then they'll finish the task, you know?
Yes, I love that. Okay, so this is Wednesday at moon set time, no matter
Wednesday at moon set, no matter where you are.
And during this time, you sit with what is your vision, what are your goals, and how can you prioritize, edit, and also just start to make a plan to actually bring it into reality. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And the astrology is aligned for us to do that. Like, this is the perfect moment for us to do that.
Yes, perfect moment. As much as electional astrology and astrology as a whole is such an important tool to get you to do things and know the timing of it all, sometimes the timing is already within you. And like you were talking about your example with the class, you asked me for the election 2 days before you were actually signing up, and it just so happened that the election was perfect. Like, that moment, regardless of me being there, it would still happen. So if you're telling yourself that, like, in the core, you just get that urge to really do it, I think that there's no electional astrologer in the world, or Mars or Saturn or any planet, that can stop you. You should still do it. And if it doesn't work out, you're learning a lot of things on the way. So it's a victory either way.
Exactly. I love that you brought that up, Joe, because I think there is a potential trap in this. And I've found myself like on the edge of this at times, of where are you letting the astrology like control your life and dictate what you do? Or is it informing? Is it another data point that you're using? Is it a tool that you're resourcing? So for me, it's like being careful of taking all this information and then also knowing that you have an internal compass, and that internal compass is guiding you. And like you said, it might not always be comfortable, but it might be the exact thing you need. Because I feel like when we're doing electionals, we're always looking for, where's the success? Where's the ease? Where's the beauty? And sometimes we need things that are hard, and those things that are hard are actually going to put us on our path even more fully. So maybe we wouldn't have invited it in, but it's the best thing for us. So there's 100%. This fine line, and it's a dance. And what I have found is just play with it and find your comfort zone and find where you get a little like maybe neurotic and OCD about it, but and find that middle ground for yourself that just is like, this is how I like to use it. So sometimes it's just a little bit of an experiment and a moving target. Like I've noticed that it's changed for me, like the amount that I use the electionals in the way that I make decisions or plan.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that I did want to mention, though, because we talked a lot about Wednesday, but it's really Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on where you are. So you really want to make sure that the moon is in Libra. Like that's the only thing that you want to make sure. For most of the northern hemisphere, it will be, from the western side of the world. Yeah, most of the western side of the world will be Tuesday. For the eastern side will be Wednesday. So that's an easy way, but not always. So just Google it.
And you can Google when will the moon be in Libra, and it will tell you.
Yeah, if you just Google like the chart of the moment, I think Astro Seek or Astro Gold, it will tell you. But it's either Tuesday or Wednesday. It will be pretty easy. And even if the moon is in Scorpio by then, it's still not the end of the world. I would just prefer the moon in Libra because of Mercury being in Libra there as well. But those technicalities.
Okay. Information. Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the rest of the week.
Yeah. So one of the other thing that I wanted to talk about, sorry, to not move away from the election too much, but I also prepared a little bit of a practice because the moon in those last few degrees of Libra is in a lunar mansion that is specifically good for business matters and for again really fleshing those things out and having and assigning jobs and doing all that. And they say that the image of that lunar mansion is of a guy sitting in a throne holding scales. So, and what I always like to do with the lunar mansion stuff is to just sit and meditate on that image and try to think of what that means to you. And I think especially now with, like we're talking about with the Mars and Gemini situation and trying to do too much, the image of a guy sitting in a throne of scales really will get you to think about measuring and what is it that he's measuring to be able to sit in that throne? Like, how is he able to keep those scales leveled the whole time? And that answer will vary from person to person, but you're trying to find that answer.
Okay, I am sure there are many people like me who also don't know what lunar mansions are. I also remember Donna Woodwell is also the person who introduced me to lunar mansion. So can you explain what lunar mansions are?
Yes. So it depends on, there's different types of lunar mansions, but I use the tropical one. So I'll explain the tropical one because that's the one I know the most. But imagine the zodiac, but the zodiac of the moon. So the lunar mansions, so the moon stays in a sign in like a particular spot every day, and it's about 13 degrees long. So it's a division of that same 360-degree wheel into 13 degrees-ish sections of the zodiac, and they each represent one of the days that the moon spends in those signs throughout the month. So the whole cycle is based off of the lunar month, whereas the zodiac that we have is the solar year. So it's a little bit of a sun moon juxtaposition, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And there's a lot to explore there, and it's fascinating. So maybe we should do an episode on it sometime because it's actually really cool. I remember when Donna was explaining it, I was like, wow, we should bring this back somehow. Like, I know it's a tool that was used a lot, and we've kind of forgotten about it, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, Joe. So let's talk about the rest of the week.
Yeah. So for the rest of the week, we still, up until Thursday, we're still in the Mercury sort of mode because Mercury is ruling all the planets. If you guys don't know, there's the planetary days, each have a planet. And from Monday to Thursday, Mercury is responsible for one of those planets. But then when we get to Thursday, Mars gets a little bit of a bigger say in the whole situation. So if we're looking towards Thursday, we're really anticipating those Mars and Gemini significations to get a little bit more heightened and more noticeable. And again, we're talking about Mars and Gemini and this idea of arguments, but Mars and Gemini can also be games and competition. I like to think of like fighting games with Mars and Gemini. And I played a fair bit of fighting games growing up. And that there's that sense of like competitiveness and wanting to win, but it's all fun and games. No one's really getting hurt. but sometimes egos can get hurt in that whole process. So I think Thursday is one of those days to watch out, and maybe not, if there is somebody who is actually being argumentative, maybe it's the time to be, I hate saying that, but because it's not really the better person, but to be the person that tones things down. If we're thinking about Mars and Gemini, Mars is a hot and dry planet, and Gemini is a hot and moist sign. So the quality of hotness, and think of like hot-headedness, and is heightened. But at least the dryness, I'm getting a little technical, the dryness of Mars is mitigated. And the thing about Mars's dryness is the thing that causes the separations. And it's really that us versus them sort of thing. It's like me and then there's you. So Gemini softens a little bit of that in Mars, but then it might be that, might bring a little bit of that impulsivity of the moment, of like saying something that you don't really mean, or hearing something that wasn't really said either. So I think Thursday is one of those days that we really want to be patient with our words, really think before talking it out, or even writing things down. It's one of the things that I really like to do, because I'm very guilty of that, again, as a Mars and Gemini myself. Sometimes I'll give advice to people that they're not expecting or they don't want, and they'll receive it in a way that it's not the perfect moment for them to receive it. So one of the things that I started doing to mitigate some of my Mars and Gemini hot-headedness is to just really write a whole letter to that person and sit with it, spend a day. Thursday is the only day that is really heightened. So take that Thursday to just write it, think about it. And if you still want to have that conversation on Friday, have it. It's Venus's day. But one of the things that I find that happens when you do that is that if you truly in that visceral moment where you have to send that message to that person, just by writing them down, even if they don't hear it personally, it's almost like in some metaphysical way they hear it. And I've had it so many times that people come to talk to me as opposed to me talking to them. And that's how the conversation starts. So it's very, very cool to have the opposition bring the first move, because then you know how to respond to it.
I love that. That's great. Very tangible.
Sweet. Thank you. And then Friday, like I was saying, we go into that Venus day. And I think that Friday is probably going to be a very exciting day, because this is the very last day that we're going to have a Venus day while Venus is in Leo, and it's getting ready to go into Virgo, where Venus is said to be fallen, which I have some issues with, because Venus actually does really well in earth signs. So even though I think the fallen Venus is that obsession with perfection and making sure everything is absolutely perfect and absolutely beautiful, but maybe Venus in Leo doesn't have that as much, because it's just happy to be there. So I think Friday is that day to just be happy to be there before we go into Virgo world. And we start to be a little bit more critical and nitpicky with the things that we let into our lives. And again, that's part of the process of the cycle of Venus, and that's very important to be a little bit nitpicky. But I think it's also important to enjoy that last little bit of Venus in Leo that we have, because we're not going to have that for a year and a bit. So throw a party on Friday.
Granted. So Friday's a great day. Enjoy, do Venus things.
Yes. And then, which then leads us into Saturday. And I thought it was so hilarious when I looked at it, because Friday seems like a big party, and then Saturday we get into Saturn mode already, and then we have a moon opposite Uranus square Saturn, and I'm like, this sounds like a hangover. If Friday is the party, Saturday is probably the hangover. So thinking about this T-square of like Uranus, Saturn, moon, probably Saturn day is the day to rest a little bit, not be too wild. That's why we're using that Friday. We're taking advantage of it. But then Saturday, we want to be a little bit more cautious, I guess, especially with the moon opposite Uranus, and that Mars situation is still there, it's still present. So the impulsivity kind of gets kicked up a notch. But imagine impulsivity meeting the walls of Saturn. You don't want to, I don't think you want to punch any walls. I think it's the best to sit and meditate that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, Sunday, we're back to Mercury. And with the sun, who is the ruler of Sunday, being in Virgo. And I love how Gemini Brett was talking about Virgo last week, because that really brought me to that first decan of Virgo. If you don't know what decan is just the first 10 days of the sun in the sign, roughly. And that decan has the image, I think this is from Austin Copics. He's my teacher on the decans. His image is of a tree. I think it's the apple of a tree, and like knowing, and the meaning of it is knowing how to raise the tree in the first place so you can have that apple. Mm-hmm. And Gemini Brett was talking about how the Leo Virgo-ness of it all is really learning how to become good or at something. And this first 10 days of Virgo really highlights that. So this Sunday, if we're thinking about the progression of Friday being a party, Saturday not being that much of a party, Sunday can be okay, now that that's happened, what do we do? Let's plant some trees. Let's let's assess the situation and see how we can go from here. But yes, I think that is the week.
I love it. Okay, Joe, what a week. Thank you for that little tour through our week ahead. And I will go ahead and do the summary now. Yeah? Okay. So you're saying that the theme is talk it out, that there is this opportunity for collaboration. I heard sort of like delegation kind of things throughout, especially at that electional time. And that there also is this opportunity to kind of get to the nitty gritty of things, like get underneath it, like what's at the core. Mm-hmm. We are in this retrograde moment in time, which is a long lasting period, but that this is a great time to flesh out ideas. Is it flesh out ideas or flush out ideas?
I never know. English is my second language.
I have no excuse, and I really don't know. So choose your own adventure on that one. So really just coming out with a plan, not necessarily the time to execute, but we are doing some planning. Assigning jobs to people is another thing that came up a lot. And that for the mutable signs, this is a little bit of a sneak peek into the type of energy that's going to be very prevalent in 2023, where you may sort of like meander into opportunities and not even know you're in an opportunity, and then have it turn out something totally different than you ever would have thought that it was going to be when it started. So this is this kind of mutable energy for next year. Monday, I have emphasizing fairness. So looking at, what's fair, what's not. I have one of my daughters is Libra, so I'm very aware of this conversation about what's fair and what's not fair. So emphasizing fairness in the kinds of decisions you're making, in the way that you're moving throughout your day. Tuesday and Wednesday is when we have this exciting electional that you chose for us. And this is an opportunity to really be with that vision that you have and how you want it to turn out, and reconnecting with the why and the vision and the bigness that a lot of us were feeling, or mostly probably everybody was feeling, whether or not you knew you were in that Jupiter-Neptune alignment period in early spring. That was like April, right? April.
Yeah, like end of April.
Yes.
Beginning of May.
Yeah. So anything that was coming up for you at that time, taking a moment to revisit it and start to think about how you can make it real. On Thursday, well, actually, last week I talked about my daughter who got passed up for the dance performance. And Brett was saying, we'll have her get to the why of why she even dances in the first place, which we did. And it was great. And I said, so why do you do it in the first place? And she goes, because I love it. And I was like, well, that has nothing to do with performing or not performing, or people seeing you or not seeing you. That has to do with just your love of it. So really like find that love and dance from there, and everything else will work out when you really focus on that why. So sounds like an invitation for all of us to do that when it comes to these bigger visions that you may be having for your life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So Thursday, great day. Great day. Great day for arguments. No, great day for competition. But also remember to be the person who kind of tones things down. Maybe this is the good day to throw the water on the fire. Like this is the good day. Like help it simmer down a little bit. Be careful of being impulsive. Cultivate patience and write things down. I love this this suggestion to write things down. And if it still feels like you have energy around it, on Friday would be the time to have the actual conversation. Friday is Venus Day, throw a party. This is a great final moments of Venus and Leo, which is just like being happy to be here now. It reminds me of my golden retriever who is a Leo, and he's just like happy all the time just to be alive and be where you're at. So just being happy and cultivating that. On Saturday, it's a little bit of a hangover from that. Woo, exuberance. We're having a little bit of a hangover. This is a great day to rest, to be cautious. When I was thinking about planning for the week, this would be a great day to actually plan in a rest day, a day where you're just going to need to take it easy and chill. You said to sit and meditate. That's another thing we could do. And then Sunday, the sun is moving into Virgo. This is, I love what you said about the tree and holding the apple. And it's like, how do we actually get to the apple? Like, how does the tree get to the place where it's bearing fruit? And I think this is another visitation of some of those things that we're thinking about during those electional moments when the moon is setting and in Libra. That's the key.
Yes.
Tuesday, Wednesday, yes. Moon setting in Libra. Do your little contemplation, and also contemplate the man with the scales during that electional moment. But also on Sunday, it's a little bit of a revisitation of like, what's it going to take? What's it going to take to actually make this dream a physical reality and have it bear fruit in our lives? Yeah.
Yeah. Great summary. Oh, sorry.
All right. Well, that's the week. Joe, thank you so much. It's been so much fun to be here with you. If you're listening to this going, God, it'd be really fun to be able to know when certain moments are great for me, to do anything from like get a haircut, to go on a trip, to sign the contract, to ask the person out on the date. I mean, it can get so granular, like so specific. But if you
I love that you mentioned the haircuts.
What's that?
I love that you mentioned the haircuts too.
It's
so important. I started cutting my own hair after I started doing elections, and I never messed it up.
Amazing. That's so good. All right. So these are the kinds of things that electional astrology can help with. If you want to learn how to do it, that masterclass with Omari Martin is awesome. astrologyhub.com/elections is a great place to start. You can go super deep with this and study it for a lifetime. But if you want to just get your feet wet and start to learn, Omari's class is great for that. And then if you want to have access to people who do electional astrology, make sure you get on the waitlist for Astrologer Connect. That's our new reading platform. Joe is actually one of the astrologers who works on the platform. So when you have that question, you can go onto the platform, see if Joe's little light is on, send him, initiate a quick call with him. Just be like, Joe, I need to make this big decision. I need to time this thing that's really important. What does the astrology say? And Joe will be able to give you some guidance on that. So we did the beta test a few weeks ago. It was awesome. There's definitely things for us to work on from a tech perspective. So we're working on all those things, but we're going to be bringing Astrologer Connect back out here in the fall. So make sure that you go to astrologyhub.com/connect to get on the wait list, and you will be one of the first to know when our reading platform is fully available. And like I said, you can access astrologers like in the moment if you need like a quick answer and you want to be able to just talk to someone who's available. Or you can book readings. So if there's a bigger question you have, if you really want to sit down with an astrologer, have them look at your chart and give you some in-depth guidance, you can also book a reading. And those readings range from anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how deep you want to go. So Joe is one of our about 11 astrologers who's working on the platform right now, who are just awesome. And I'm so happy that you're playing that role. And it's been so fun to do the weekly weather with you, Joe.
Oh, thank you so much. It was so fun to do it too.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. Thank you, as always, for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Hi, this is Becca Tarnas.
And I'm Rick Tarnas. And we're really looking forward to teaching an upcoming workshop here at Astrology Hub on September 21st.
If you want to be the first to know when registration opens, make sure you're signed up for the Cosmic Insider at astrologyhub.com/insider.
We look forward to seeing you there.